This is lesson number 69, Algebra 1, factoring trinomials. And what we have done at this point is multiplied binomials. We have taken something like x minus 6 times x plus 3 and multiplied those, remember, using the FOIL method. First, outside, inside, last. And let's go ahead and do that once here. Okay. So we're going to multiply the first terms together. The first terms are x, and we get an x squared. The outside terms would be this x and this 3, and we're going to get 3x. And then we're going to multiply the inside terms, which is this negative 6 and this positive x. They're inside. They're the closest together. Negative 6 times x is negative 6x. And then we're going to multiply finally the last terms, the negative 6 and the 3. And that gives us a negative 18. And when we do the FOIL method, we'll always get 4 terms. Now remember, a term is an expression separated by a plus or a minus sign. So I can look here and go 1, 2, 3, 4 terms because I have a separated by a plus or a minus sign. And I have an FOIL. 4 letters there tell me I'm going to get 4 terms. Now usually I'll be able to combine the middle two. Not always, but most of the time. And so then I have x squared. Positive 3 minus 6 is negative 3, and then nothing with the 18. And I end up getting an expression that looks like that with 3 terms in it. Now these 3 terms are called a quadratic trinomial, because the word tri, like tricycle, means 3, and I have 3 terms here. The quadratic word means that this number up here in my exponent will be a 2. That's the power of the trinomial, is going to be a 2. And that can't be any other number but a 2 if it's going to be called a quadratic trinomial or a quadratic expression or a quadratic equation. Alright, so what we're going to do in this lesson is we're going to go backwards. What we did up here is we took the 2 trinomials, used the FOIL method, and got this. What if they gave us this and they wanted us to go back to this? That's what we're going to do in this lesson, is go back to these 2 binomials. Okay, so it's called factoring, and this is how it works. In fact, we're going to make this one go back to that. Alright, so what we're trying to do here, in fact, let me write it. We're trying to get back to the x minus 6 times the x plus 3. So that is what direction we're going to, and it's called factoring. So let's do this. What we're going to do is we're going to make 2 parentheses, because that's what we have up there, is 2 parentheses. Okay, and we're going to take the square root of x squared, which means we're going to put an x here and an x here, because the square root of x squared is x. Whenever you take the square root of something squared, it takes it back to its original. So for example, if I had the square root of 3 squared, that is going to be the square root of 9, which is 3. So what happens is the square root sign takes away the exponent. So it negates it. It makes it go away. So it makes, when you take the square root of something squared, everything goes away except the number inside the radical sign. So when I do the same thing here, square root of x squared, I just get an x. And that will always be the case, and that will become very handy later on. Alright, now I need to find out what number to put here and what number to put here. Okay, the way I do that is I find 2 numbers that when I multiply them, I get negative 18, and add them, get negative 3. So, for instance, what two numbers multiplied together give me 18? 9 and 2. Well, if I multiply 9 and 2, do I get negative 18? No, I get positive 18. So, one of these has to be negative, so that when I multiply 9 times negative 2, I get negative 18. But when I add 9 and 2, do I get negative 3? No, I do not. I get 7. So that isn't going to work. How about negative 9 times positive 2? That gives me negative 18. But when I add them, what do I get? I get negative 7. So I get a negative, but I don't get my 3. So neither one of those are going to work for me. So I keep looking. Let's see, what else multiplied together gives me 18? 6 and 3. So which one's negative? Well, if I put negative in front of the 3, I get negative 18. What is 6 minus 3? 6 minus 3 is 3. Is that what I get here? No, I've got a negative 3 that I'm trying to get, so that doesn't work. So how about negative 6 times, negative 6 times 3? That gives me negative 18, like I want. What's negative 6 plus 3? Negative 3. So it worked. Negative 6 times 3 is negative 18. Negative 6 plus 3 is negative 3. So that works. So I put one of the numbers here, doesn't matter which order, and one of the numbers here. And at that point, I'm done. See how it matches this up here? Okay, so just a little bit of a clue to help you understand which one is going to be negative and which one's going to be positive. So you don't have to go through all this. You can just find the two numbers. I know that 6 times 3 is 18. I know that the difference or something with 6 and 3, I can get 3. If I take 6 minus 3, I can get 3. So which one of these has the negative sign on it? It's going to be the bigger number is going to get the sign of this right here. If this is negative, the bigger number is going to be negative. If this were positive, the bigger number is going to be positive. So it helps to just find the two numbers. 6 times 3 is 18, and I know that I can get a 3 here by combining the 6 and the 3, by taking the difference between them. And then you don't even have to worry about which one's negative, which one's positive. You just look up here, and this sign is going to go on the biggest number. And then that makes it easy for you. Alright, so let's keep going here and practice a couple more. Get rid of all of this. Okay, so the next example is x squared minus 14x minus 15. Alright, so we know we get an x there and an x there. Two numbers multiplied together that give me a 15, and the difference between them is going to be a 14. Okay, so I know 3 times 5 is 15. Can I add those up and get a 14? No, so I know those aren't going to work. So we scrap those. Alright, how about a 15 and a 1? Multiplied together give me a 15. What's the difference between 15 and 1? 14. So that one works because I get a 14 there. So I put a 15 here and a 1 there. And remember, the sign on this is negative, so the sign on the bigger number is negative, which means the sign on this one is going to be positive, because when I multiply the negative 15 times the positive 1, I get a negative 15. If this were a negative 1, I'd be negative 15 times negative 1, and what do two negatives give you? A positive, and I don't have a positive here, so that I know that's not going to work. So that's going to be my answer there. Okay? Alright, let's keep moving along. Next example. X squared plus 3x minus 10. Okay, make our parenthesis, x there, x there. Two numbers multiplied together that give me a 10. Well, 2 and 5 multiply together to give me a 10. Can I get a 3 if I take the difference? I sure can. So I know my answer is going to be a 2 and a 5. What's the sign here? A positive. So it looks like I would put a positive here. Okay. Now what sign would go here? A negative. Because 5 times negative 2 is a negative 10. 5 minus 2 is going to give me my positive 3 there. Okay, so that one is done. And let's do another example. Negative 5x plus x squared plus 6. Alright, you can't solve this unless you have everything in the right order. And remember, you have to drag the sign along with you if you move things around. So I'm just taking this and putting it in front so it becomes first. X and an x. Two numbers multiplied together that give you a 6 and added give you a 5, or subtracted. Alright, so we've got a 6 times 1. Does that give me a 6? Yeah. What's the difference between those? 5. 3 times 2 is 6. What happens if I add those? I get a 5. So if I subtract this one, I get a 5. If I add these, I get a 5. So which one works? Well, let's try the first one. Let's try this one. And negative and a positive. So let's see what happens here. If I take negative 6 times 1, I get negative 6. That's not what I get up here. So that means this one is not the right one. Let's try putting the 3 and 2 in there. Okay, biggest number is negative, so let's put that there. And what sign goes here? I don't know. Well, let's try a plus sign. Negative 3 times positive 2 is a negative 6. That's not what we have up here. Negative 3 plus 2, that doesn't give me a negative 5 either. So let's leave the numbers the same, but change this to a negative 2. Now what happens? Negative 3 times negative 2 is a positive 6. Negative 3 plus a negative 2 is a negative 5. So that one works. So that's how I know that that one's right. And you can check this by doing the FOIL method and doing x times x is x squared. That's your first. Your outside, x times negative 2. Then your inside. Then your last, negative 3 times negative 2. And you get x squared minus 5x plus 6. Okay, does that look like that? It does, so we did it right. If we were to use the 6 and the 1, we would have gotten a different answer here. Okay, so it does help to go ahead and check these. Alright, let's do x squared plus 5 plus 6x, and that's going to be x squared plus 6x plus 5. We have to put it in that order. Two numbers, x, x, two numbers multiplied together that give me 5. The only thing I can multiply together to give me 5 is 5 and 1. And this number is in front of my biggest one, so the only one we need to worry about is what number goes there. Well, if it's a plus sign, then when I multiply a positive 5 times a positive 1, I get a positive 5. And if I add a 5 and a 1, I get a 6. So both of these being positive is necessary. So really the only difficult part on this is finding out what sign is going to go on this smaller number. Remember, the sign of the bigger number is going to be whatever sign this is. But the sign of the smaller number is the one that's sometimes tricky, that you have to play around with a little bit. And sometimes it takes doing the FOIL method to find out if this sign is the right one. But other than finding this sign, the rest of it's pretty much self-explanatory, fairly easy. So if it doesn't work with this being a plus sign, put a negative sign in there and see if that works. Okay? And that's it for lesson number 69.